Crews were initially called out for reports of very heavy smoke in this second-floor unit off of 48th Street in Warner. Video from our drone shows a broken patio door, signs of how firefighters tried to get inside to put out the flames. Thankfully, they were able to stop the fire from spreading, but while inside, they came across the bodies of a man and two women. Police say because one of them had obvious signs of trauma, homicide and arson detectives were collecting evidence from the scene.
It just makes me sad, honestly. Like, any homicidal intent obviously is sad, but like to think that there was like a drawn out like scuffle or like abuse of some kind is horrible. Like, I don't think anyone really likes to hear that.
The investigation into what exactly happened here and who was involved is ongoing. As soon as we learn more details, we'll bring that to you. Reporting in Ahwatukee, Alexis Dominguez for Arizona's Family.